If you are seeing this now, it is not by chance. It is because the hour has come for you to hear what most men will never be allowed to know. This is the truth they hope you never discover, because the moment you do, you will no longer serve them. You will no longer obey fear. You will no longer drift. You will rise. And when a man rises in thought, he rises in life. He becomes uncontrollable. He no longer waits. He no longer asks. He no longer apologizes for the fire inside him. He moves with decision. He speaks with faith. He acts with purpose. He becomes what he has declared. This truth, if obeyed, will remove the chains of hesitation. It will strip the voice of fear from your mind. It will erase the belief that you are small, that you are behind, that you are unworthy of wealth, power, or command. It will kill the old identity that waited for the world to approve and replace it with a man who walks as if heaven placed him here for a reason. It will give you clarity, so you no longer ask what your purpose is, but walk in it daily. It will give you fire, so you no longer wait to feel ready, but act as if nothing can stop you. It will give you discipline, so your days no longer drift, but build. It will give you authority, so you speak as the builder, not the beggar. It will give you wealth, not just in coin, but in courage, in focus, in spiritual order. It will give you a new identity, one that commands respect, demands growth, and refuses retreat. But hear me now. This truth is hidden, not shouted. It is not found in a single line, but woven into every principle spoken here. If you drift while listening, if you let your mind wander, if you treat this as common, you may miss the very sentence your future was waiting for. The wise man, the builder, the leader, the one who becomes unstoppable, will not only listen to this entire speech with full attention, he will study it over and over again until it is no longer something he hears, but something he becomes. This is not a lesson. This is a reckoning, a spiritual mirror, a mental command. And if you obey it, line by line without pause, you will never return to who you were. But if you ignore it, you will stay exactly what they prefer you to be: silent, uncertain, and afraid. Listen closely. Everything is about to change. The first and most dangerous lie ever told to you is that poverty is normal, that lack is your portion, that you were born into limitation, shaped by circumstance, and destined to scrape your way through life, hoping for permission, praying for breakthrough, begging for improvement. That is the lie, and it was planted in your mind long before you had the power to question it. You were not born to be poor, but you were trained to stay that way. Poverty is not inherited. Poverty is installed. A man is not born afraid to succeed. A man is not born hesitant to speak. A man is not born uncertain, insecure, or ashamed of his ambition. These are not traits, they are programs. They are the result of repeated suggestion, implanted in the subconscious when the mind was still soft. You were told to sit down. You were told not to be too confident. You were warned not to dream too big. You were taught to obey rules written by men who never built anything. And slowly, thought by thought, word by word, your identity became something they gave you, not something you chose. You must understand now that most men live inside mental prisons built by other people's beliefs. They call it being realistic, but it is slavery. They call it being careful, but it is mental paralysis. From family to school to religion to employers to media to culture, you have been surrounded by thoughts that were not your own. And the more you heard them, the more you began to believe them, because repetition is how belief is formed, and emotion, especially fear, makes it permanent. This is the truth they hide. You become what you repeatedly think with emotion. It does not matter if the thought is true. It does not matter if it is helpful. The subconscious does not argue, it does not question, it does not filter, it accepts whatever is repeated with emotion, and it begins to shape your actions, your habits, and your results according to that belief. If you repeatedly think, "I'm not ready," you will act like it. If you repeatedly think, "I'll probably fail," you will create that failure. If you repeatedly think, "This is just how life is," then life will obey your resignation. But the reverse is also true. If you speak your aim, your identity, your decision with energy and certainty, and you do it daily, then your subconscious must begin to conform. It will begin shaping behavior to match the command. This is not theory. This is the law of the mind. And the world you see outside of you is nothing more than the report card of the thoughts you have accepted within. This is why most men remain poor. Not because they are incapable, but because they have been hypnotized by thoughts that do not serve their purpose. And the system prefers it that way. Weak men are easier to manage. Uncertain men never resist. Broke men never disrupt. And the truth is, it is easier to sell you escape than it is to teach you discipline. So they sell you distraction. They give you comfort. They give you motivation instead of mental obedience. And you remain locked inside thoughts you never chose. But you are not most men. Not anymore. Because the moment you realize that your thoughts have been given to you, you gain the power to give them back. And when you give them back, you create space to install new ones. Thoughts you write, you repeat, and you obey. This is the power of the law of cosmic habit force. Cosmic habit force is the unseen law that controls your behavior once a thought is repeated long enough. It does not ask your permission. It does not care what you wish for. It only responds to what is repeated with belief. And once installed, it becomes automatic. You no longer have to force it. It becomes who you are. This is why it is easier to stay poor than to become rich once poverty has been accepted. The habit of smallness, of hesitation, of excuse has become law in the mind, and your life obeys that law whether you like it or not. But this same law can become your ally, because if you begin today to speak new thoughts, to align your action with a new identity, to repeat daily a new command, you will reprogram the law itself, and it will begin serving your new standard with the same power it once served your fear. Let me give you an example history cannot erase. Andrew Carnegie, born into nothing. No wealth, no inheritance, no advantage. But he refused to think like the world around him. While other men accepted their position, he rejected mental poverty. He separated his mind from their system. While they spoke of limitation, he spoke of vision. While they sought survival, he demanded fortune. And because he decided what to think, the world gave him what he demanded. His fortune was not the result of a miracle. It was the result of mental independence. His empire was not an accident. It was the consequence of refusing to think like everyone else. You must now do the same. You must begin today to take full possession of your mind. You must stop thinking what you were told. You must stop repeating what others have said. You must write your own aim. You must speak your own identity. You must reject every thought that does not serve the builder you are becoming. Do not say, "I can't control my thoughts." That is what they want you to believe, because the man who cannot control his thought cannot control his life. You can. You must. And the longer you wait, the more you allow poverty to become your daily religion. Now speak this aloud without hesitation. I do not think what I was told, I think what I decide. Again, I do not think what I was told, I think what I decide. This is your turning point. From now on, no thought enters your mind without inspection. No sentence is repeated without intention. No belief is accepted unless it was chosen by you. You are not here to carry their limitations. You are here to build your own truth. And that truth begins now with the thoughts you will no longer accept and the thoughts you will now install. You were not born uncertain. You were not created to question every movement of your soul. The man who now hesitates, second guesses, and waits for signs before he moves is not the original man. That man was built by repetition. That man was trained, conditioned, and shaped by voices that did not serve him. Because doubt is not native to you, it was installed. The natural state of your mind is faith. You came into this world reaching, trusting, obeying instinct without fear. You did not ask for evidence. You did not hesitate to try. You moved, you reached, you believed. But over time, those around you, small in thought, narrow in belief, afraid of failure, began to teach you doubt. They warned you to be realistic. They told you to slow down. They told you to play it safe. And because your mind was still soft, you accepted their limitation as law. And so your faith, your native power, was buried beneath layers of instruction, not education, domestication. And the more you repeated their doubts, the more your subconscious began to obey. And now as a man, you wonder why you hesitate, why you speak without fire, why you think about what you want but never move toward it. It is not because you are weak. It is because you were taught to disobey yourself. But you can undo what was installed. You can return to your original nature. And the tool by which you do this is called autosuggestion. Autosuggestion is the law of self-instruction. It is the act of reprogramming the subconscious mind through repetition, emotion, and belief. It is how you remove the voice of fear and install the voice of command. The subconscious does not accept instruction through logic. It accepts only what is repeated with feeling. And this is how doubt was installed in the first place. By hearing the same fearful ideas again and again, spoken with conviction by those you once trusted. Now you must do the same, but in reverse. You must become the instructor. You must speak aloud every day the beliefs you now choose. You must speak them as law, not hope, and you must act on them, because belief without obedience is spiritual fraud. You must say, I believe in my purpose. I believe in my voice. I believe in my decision. I act as if the outcome is already certain. I speak only what I'm building. I obey only the thought I have chosen. Let me give you a story the world cannot ignore. Thomas Edison, more than 10,000 failed attempts to create the incandescent light. And yet he persisted, not because he had proof, not because the world believed in him. In fact, the world mocked him. The press dismissed him. The critics laughed, but Edison believed before the result existed. And because he believed, he acted. And because he acted, the result appeared. This is the law. You must stop waiting to believe until the world shows you something. The world will never show you anything until you believe first and act accordingly. This is the core command. Do not ask for proof before you believe. Believe, then act, and the world adjusts. Read it again. Speak it aloud. Let it burn away every trace of hesitation, because you will never become the man you were born to be if you demand evidence before obedience. The man who waits to be certain will serve the man who already is. And do not say, but what if I'm wrong? That is doubt in disguise. It is the voice of the crowd, the voice of the man who stays behind and calls it wisdom. It is not wisdom. It is fear dressed in logic. The only way to know if you are right is to move. And when you move, the truth will reveal itself, not before. The man who speaks faith and does not act is a liar to himself. The man who acts before the proof arrives will soon become the proof himself. This is how you become powerful again. Not through external validation, not through praise, not through waiting for someone to see your potential. You become powerful by repeating the belief until you move and moving until results appear. You must now begin this discipline. Each morning, stand in silence and speak. I was born to believe. I act in obedience. I move with power. Write down the doubts you've been repeating. Burn the list. Replace each with a new belief written in the form of an identity. I am the type of man who obeys faith, not fear. I am the type of man who acts before the world believes. I am the type of man who commands results through obedience. Act every day on one belief, no matter how small the action. At night, write, what belief did I prove today? This is how faith becomes your foundation again, not as a feeling, but as a command. Say this now. I was born to believe. I speak faith. I act in obedience. I do not ask permission. Again, I was born to believe. I speak faith. I act in obedience. I do not ask permission. This is your new rhythm. This is how the man inside of you returns. The one who moved before others approved. The one who spoke truth even when his voice shook. The one who believed so deeply he began to build before the world caught up. And now the world will catch up to you because you no longer doubt, you decide, you act, you become. There is an enemy so quiet, so subtle, so deceptive that most men never notice it has entered their minds until it has stolen their lives. It does not strike with violence, it does not shout, it whispers, it waits, it hides beneath good intentions, behind polite delay, beneath respectable indecision. This enemy is called drifting, and it is the chosen weapon of every system that profits from your confusion. Drifting is the state of moving through life without command. It is waking without purpose, working without vision, speaking without fire, and deciding nothing with finality. It is being busy while building nothing. It is calling hesitation wisdom and fear prudence. It is waiting for the perfect moment that never comes, and repeating the same thoughts tomorrow that brought you nothing yesterday. Drifting is not just a habit. It is a trap, a spiritual paralysis. And it is the condition that keeps most men poor in thought, poor in discipline, and poor in result. I spoke at length of this enemy in Outwitting the Devil. I revealed its nature, its tactics, and its grip. And I tell you now, the devil, by which I mean the voice of fear, confusion, and passivity, does not concern himself with men who think. He does not fear those who work hard but live without aim. He is not threatened by talent. He does not fear good men. He fears only the man who makes decisions and acts on them. Because the moment a man decides and backs that decision with belief and persistence, he becomes a force the world cannot control. The system you live in, whether educational, economic, or cultural, has no incentive to make you strong. It has every incentive to make you obedient, to make you polite, to make you agreeable, hesitant, dependent. Because indecisive men are easy to move. They wait for direction, they wait for opinion. They wait for someone to approve what they already know they must do. And the longer they wait, the more they are shaped by voices that never had their best interest in mind. But the man who decides, truly decides, cannot be controlled. He no longer bends to the tone of others. He does not seek confirmation to move. He does not drift. He chooses. And in choosing, he becomes unshakable. You must now understand, drifting is the default condition of the man who does not command his own thoughts. It is the natural result of a mind left to wander. Just as a garden will grow weeds unless cultivated, the mind will produce indecision unless it is disciplined by purpose. Most men spend their lives asking questions they never intend to answer. They entertain ideas without selecting one. They live in motion, not in movement. They delay out of habit, not caution. And then they look up years later, wondering why they are no further along than the man they used to be. Let me speak this truth to you now. The man who waits will obey the man who decides, always. The undecided will serve the decisive. The aimless will follow the focused. If you do not command your day, someone else will. If you do not build your vision, you will be hired to build another man's. If you do not set your rhythm, the world will give you one, and it will not serve your purpose. Decision is not an emotion. It is a law, and it must be trained like a muscle. You must learn to decide without apology, without permission, without repeated questioning. You must speak. This is what I want. This is where I am going. This is what I will do. And then you must act. Do not fear being wrong. Fear being still. The drifting man never fails because he never starts. But in never starting, he guarantees that he never wins. I would rather you decide and adjust than think endlessly while life passes by. Andrew Carnegie did not build his fortune by sitting in delay. He decided early that he would control steel, and he acted with boldness while others hesitated. Henry Ford did not wait for consensus to begin building an industry. He decided. He failed. He persisted. And because he did not drift, he conquered. Now let me give you the practice that will kill drifting at the root. Every morning, speak your definite chief aim aloud. Say it as if it were already completed. Each day, write one decision you have avoided and act on it immediately. Remove the phrase, "I'll think about it," from your vocabulary. Replace it with, "I've decided." Every evening, ask, "Where did I decide today? Where did I drift?" Write the truth. Refuse to explain decisions to those who do not share your aim. You are not responsible to the confused. You must retrain your mind to associate power with deciding quickly and firmly. This is what all wealthy men do. They do not let small minds stall their movements. They do not circle their own judgment waiting for others to nod. They decide, they act, and they become strong because they do. Say this aloud now. I do not drift. I decide. I act. I move in alignment with my aim. Again, I do not drift. I decide. I act. I move in alignment with my aim. Let this become your weapon. Let it slice through noise, doubt, and hesitation. Because from this moment forward, you no longer wait to live. You live by design. You speak with clarity. You move with conviction. You decide, and the world responds. Every man wants to change his life. Few understand where that change must begin. It is not in money, not in connections, not in timing or talent. Every change, every advancement, every breakthrough, every moment of power begins in thought. For the mind is the battlefield. Not one battle of riches, health, or success is ever fought outwardly until it is first fought and won inwardly. And the man who does not rule his thought cannot rule his results. Let this truth enter you with finality. Thought is not casual. Thought is not neutral. Thought is law. What you allow yourself to dwell upon shapes what you move toward. And what you tolerate in the privacy of your mind becomes what you eventually obey in public. Most men lose the war of success because they never fight for the clarity of their own thoughts. They let noise in. They let fear whisper. They let contradiction speak louder than vision. And when their aim is drowned out by doubt, they drift. Not because they lacked power, but because they lacked protection. You must now treat your chief aim as a fortress. It is not a wish. It is not an idea to be discussed with the uncertain. It is not a theory to be shared with small minds. It is your law. It is the foundation upon which every other thought must rest. And like any fortress, it must be protected, guarded with discipline, reinforced with daily repetition, sealed against contradiction. If you allow even one opposing voice to take root, maybe it won't work, maybe this isn't the right time, maybe I'm not ready, you invite the enemy into the gates. And that enemy, if tolerated, will weaken your resolve from the inside until you no longer recognize the clarity you once possessed. This is how greatness is lost, not in action, but in thought. To keep your mind pure, you must now introduce a daily mental audit, a checkpoint, a moment of truth. When thoughts arise, you ask, does this thought serve my aim or stall it? It is simple. It is binary. If it serves your aim, it is permitted. If it stalls your aim, it is rejected immediately. You do not reason with it. You do not debate it. You do not write in your journal about it. You command it to leave, because your mind is not a playground. It is a temple, and only thoughts that serve your purpose are allowed to stay. This is how Henry Ford built an empire while others waited. When he envisioned the V8 engine, engineers called it impossible. The press mocked him. The business world doubted him. But Ford refused to allow external noise to corrupt his internal law. He isolated himself from opinions. He held his thought in place until it became real. That is mental authority. That is how innovation is born, not in the lab, but in the mind that will not let go of its aim. You must now do the same. No matter who doubts, no matter what voices speak against your aim, no matter how loud the world becomes, your thought remains fixed. Let me give you the practice that sharpens mental discipline. Each morning, read your chief aim aloud with full voice. You are not reminding yourself. You are reasserting the law. Throughout the day, pause and ask, is this thought aligned with my aim? If yes, continue. If no, interrupt it and replace it. At night, write down the 3 dominant thoughts you held. Did they build you, or did they erode you? Speak this aloud before bed. I am the gatekeeper of my mind. No thought enters without my permission. This practice is not soft. It is not spiritual suggestion. It is command. And the man who trains his mind like this becomes unshakable. Now say this aloud, slowly and with full conviction. I guard my thought. I reject all contradiction. My aim is law in my mind. Again, I guard my thought. I reject all contradiction. My aim is law in my mind. Let this become your mental armor, because from this moment forward, your thought is not available to anyone, anything, or any emotion that does not serve the man you are building. This is the battlefield. Win here, and the world will follow. The greatest tragedy in a man's life is not the obstacles he faces, it is the identity he accepts. Most men are not crushed by the world. They are crushed by who they believe they are. They walk beneath their own power, but speak like slaves. They move with potential in their bones, but act like beggars. Not because it is true, but because they were told it was. And they accepted it. They repeated it. And by repetition, it became real. You were not born hesitant. You were taught hesitation. You were not born afraid to lead. You were taught to wait for permission. You were not born silent. You were taught to doubt your voice. Somewhere along the line, you surrendered the truth of who you are and accepted a false name, a false script, a false limitation, all written by someone who had no authority over your destiny. And worse than this, you rehearsed it. You repeated it. You spoke it in the mirror. And in doing so, you installed it. Because identity is not fate. Identity is not background. Identity is not written in the bloodline. Identity is installed. It is formed the same way all belief is formed, through repetition, emotion, and obedience. The thoughts you think most often, the words you speak aloud, the actions you take daily. These are the bricks that construct the man you become. And every time you speak weakness, every time you act from fear, every time you obey hesitation, you confirm the identity that was handed to you, not chosen by you. But you can reverse it. You can uninstall the voice of the old self and install the voice of the builder, the leader, the man who acts. And you do it through the exact same law that formed the old one: repetition, obedience, and alignment. You must now speak aloud a new identity, not once, not occasionally, but daily, until it becomes law in your mind. Let me give you a script to begin with. You may expand it, you may personalize it, but this is where you start. This is how you begin to speak the man into existence before the world sees him. I am the man who decides. I am the man who builds. I am the man who finishes. Speak this as you rise. Speak this before sleep. Speak this when you doubt, when you delay, when the old voice tries to return. Because you are not weak, you are untrained, you are not lost, you are waiting for command. And now that command is yours. Let me give you the proof that identity is not destiny, it is a choice. Abraham Lincoln was not born a president. He was not handed greatness. He was not celebrated by the world. He was mocked, ridiculed. He failed in business. He suffered tragedy. But he did not collapse. He did not surrender, because inside him burned a belief not yet visible, a self-image that was not yet confirmed by the world, but already installed in the mind. And he obeyed that image, and because he obeyed it before it was proven, it became real. That is the formula. You do not become by waiting. You become by declaring the identity and living into it. You may ask, but what if I don't believe it yet? Speak it anyway. The mind learns not through feelings, but through instruction. And if you give it the same instruction repeatedly with power, it will conform. This is the law of the subconscious. It obeys what you prove, not what you hope. Let me now give you your new discipline. Write your identity script in your own words. Begin with, I am the type of man who... Finish it with 3 to 5 lines that reflect the self you are commanding. Speak it aloud morning and night. Do not whisper. Speak with authority. Take one action daily that confirms the identity. Write what you did. Speak what it means. Every time the old voice rises, interrupt it with, that is not me. I am the man who... Then repeat your script. Track your days. Identity is installed through daily proof, not occasional effort. This is not motivational speech. This is lawful instruction. And the man who obeys it becomes unstoppable, not because the world changed, but because he changed the voice that governs him. Say this aloud now. I do not reflect my past. I declare my identity, and I walk in it daily. Again, I do not reflect my past. I declare my identity, and I walk in it daily. This is your new name, your new posture, your new foundation. You are no longer what they said you were. You are what you now say you are. And every step you take in alignment with that declaration is one step closer to the life you were born to command. There is a force in this world, unseen by the eye, but felt by every man who dares to live with boldness. It cannot be measured with tools or mapped by science. It has no body, but it moves worlds. No wealth, but it produces empires. No voice, but it answers the one who commands with belief. I have called it infinite intelligence, and I tell you this truth now. It is not silent. It is waiting. Waiting not for your need, not for your feelings, not for your tears. It is waiting for your decision and persistence. Most men misunderstand power. They wait for it to descend. They hope it will strike them like lightning. They think it must come from outside. So they delay. They speak in circles. They analyze, postpone, hesitate, reflect. And while they do, they grow weaker, smaller, more afraid. And they call this waiting wisdom. But it is not wisdom. It is drifting, the most dangerous spiritual condition a man can enter. Let me now define the 2 types of men that walk this earth, the drifter and the non-drifter. The drifter is the man who has no definite chief aim. He moves through life by default, not design. He reacts. He follows the crowd. He entertains every thought, every suggestion, every emotion, never filtering, never questioning, never deciding. He says, I'll see what happens, and so he becomes what happens. He waits for permission, and so he becomes a servant to those who never asked for it. He hopes for success, but never commands it. He is ruled by circumstance. He obeys his fears. He is full of reasons and empty of results. The non-drifter is the opposite in every way. He chooses a definite purpose, writes it, speaks it, and repeats it until it becomes law in his mind. He acts daily, before he feels ready, before the evidence appears. He surrounds himself only with voices that serve his vision. He does not entertain contradiction. He does not drift from his decisions. He speaks little but moves boldly. And because of this, infinite intelligence begins to move through him. Ideas come. Men appear. Opportunity arrives, not because he is special, but because he has obeyed the law that unlocks the flow of power. Miracles do not happen to the man who waits. Miracles come to the man who moves, because movement is proof of belief. And infinite intelligence does not reward thought alone. It rewards definite thought, backed by definite action. Charles M. Schwab did not wait for power. He acted with it before the world saw any reason to give it to him. He rose from mill worker to president of U.S. Steel, not because of his background, but because of his belief. He saw himself as a leader before the world did. He solved problems that were not his to solve. He took action where others hesitated. And because of this, because he moved before the world moved for him, the world eventually aligned. The provision arrived. The promotion came. The title followed the action, not the other way around. This is the principle you must now engrave upon your mind. The man who moves opens the gates of provision. The man who waits closes them. Infinite intelligence is not far from you. It is within you, but it does not activate itself. It does not move on your hope. It does not respond to tears. It responds only to mental definiteness and physical obedience. It is like a well of untapped power, deeper than you can imagine, but you must dig. You must strike it with the tools of repetition, belief, and movement. And when you do, it flows. Most men go through life standing 1 foot from their treasure, but never moving the soil. They pray. They wish, they cry, but they never act in alignment with what they say they believe. And so the well remains buried, not because it was hidden, but because they never claimed it. Let me give you the discipline now. Each morning, speak aloud your chief aim and one specific action you will take. At the end of each day, write one moment where you acted despite hesitation. Say aloud when resistance rises, "The power I need is already in me. I act with faith, and life responds." When others doubt, remain silent, but stay in movement. Do not ask for power. Walk as if it is already yours. That is when it arrives. You must now stop saying, "I don't know how." You must stop saying, "I need to feel ready." You must stop waiting for signs. You are the sign. You are the cause. You are the vessel through which infinite intelligence expresses itself, but only if you obey. Now say this with clarity and command. The power I need is already in me. I act with faith, and life responds. Again, the power I need is already in me. I act with faith, and life responds. This is your truth now. And from this moment forward, you will never again wait for permission to become the man you already are. There is no neutral man. There is no safe middle. A man either governs his life by principle or he is ruled by fear. One builds, the other destroys. One repeats law, the other repeats panic. One brings rhythm, discipline, riches. The other brings noise, delay, and loss. Most men would prefer to live in a place of neutrality, neither bold nor broken, neither leader nor follower. But life does not permit neutrality. Life punishes hesitation. And the man who does not consciously obey law will unconsciously obey fear. You were not born to be suspended in indecision. You were born to take command of your mind and direct it with clarity. But principle is a jealous master. It demands repetition. It demands obedience. It demands loyalty when you don't feel like following it. Fear, on the other hand, offers a cheap seduction. It demands nothing up front, but it steals everything in the end. Fear whispers, "Wait a little longer. Think more before you move. Play it safe. Maybe this isn't the right time." And the more you listen, the more you stall. The more you stall, the more you shrink. The more you shrink, the more you confirm to your subconscious that fear, not principle, is your master. You must now accept this truth. Every time you obey fear, you deepen its control. Every time you obey principle, you weaken fear's grip. This is not philosophical. It is mathematical. The mind operates on patterns. And whichever pattern you obey most often becomes your identity. Most men are not cowards by nature. They are cowards by repetition. They have obeyed fear so many times that they no longer know how to move without its permission. But the man who chooses to live by principle, even once, begins to reverse this pattern. And if he lives by principle daily, he becomes a different man entirely. His spine straightens. His decisions speed up. His voice gains weight, not because fear no longer whispers, but because he no longer listens. Principle is order. Principle is clarity. Principle is repetition of thought backed by aligned action. When you decide once and act accordingly every day without asking again, you are living by principle. And your subconscious begins to trust you. Your thoughts become precise. Your movements become swift. Your outcomes become predictable. Not because luck favors you, but because law now governs you. Let me now give you a man who obeyed principle while the world screamed around him, John D. Rockefeller. At the height of economic panic, when others were selling, collapsing, begging for mercy, Rockefeller remained still. not passive, still, still in thought, still in belief, still in movement, because he was not governed by reaction. He was governed by principle. He had studied the laws of wealth. He had written them into his identity, and he obeyed them without emotional interference. That is why his empire grew while others shrank. That is why he stood calm in crisis, because he had already decided who his master was, and it was not fear. This must now become your standard. You do not wait until fear is gone to act. You act because principle demands it. And in doing so, fear is driven out, not by force, but by irrelevance. You starve fear by disobedience. And every time you choose faith-backed action over emotional reaction, you become more free. Now let me give you the law. Define the principles you will live by. My aim is law. My voice commands my mind. I act daily regardless of feeling. I do not retreat from purpose, and I finish what I begin. Speak them aloud every morning, not as affirmation, but as declaration. You are not requesting strength. You are issuing orders. When fear rises, identify the principle it contradicts and act on the principle immediately. If fear says, "Don't make that call," you speak, "I act regardless of emotion." And you call. If fear says, "This might not work," you say, "I act daily and finish what I begin." And you continue. At the end of each day, write this in your journal. Where did I obey principle? Where did I serve fear? You do not write this to feel guilt. You write this to train accuracy. Let me now give you your affirmation. This is not for motivation. This is a weapon, a spiritual order to yourself. I obey principle. I act with law. I do not serve fear. Again, I obey principle. I act with law. I do not serve fear. Say it until your body believes it. Say it until your thoughts begin to rearrange. Say it until your subconscious begins to remove every trace of hesitation that no longer belongs to the man you've chosen to be. Because you are no longer a servant to emotion. You are no longer the victim of internal chaos. You are the builder now, the commander, the man who lives by law. And because you live by law, life will obey you in return. The mind does not respond to chance. It does not obey the man who speaks once and forgets. It does not move for the man who merely wishes. The mind obeys law, and law is written not in ink, but in repetition. What you speak to yourself daily, with belief and energy, becomes your identity. What becomes your identity controls your behavior. And what you repeatedly do becomes your life. This is the sequence. This is the mechanism. This is the principle you must now master. You must speak your definite chief aim until it commands your subconscious. You do not rise to the level of your desire. You rise to the level of your identity. And identity is installed, not inherited. It is not given by birth. It is not passed down. It is earned through repetition, through choice, through mental discipline. The subconscious mind, your internal builder, does not argue. It does not reason. It does not ask if what you tell it is true. It only asks, have I heard this often enough and with enough emotion to obey it as fact? And once the answer is yes, it begins. Quietly, powerfully, automatically. It begins moving your habits, your decisions, your interpretations, your instinct to match the command you have written. This is called autosuggestion. Autosuggestion is the daily, deliberate practice of telling your subconscious mind what to believe until it believes it. It is the most powerful tool in all human transformation. And it is also the most neglected, because most men leave their self-talk to accident. They repeat fear, confusion, limitation, and then wonder why their actions betray their intentions. They wonder why they hesitate, why they self-sabotage, why they avoid risk, why they shrink in moments that require expansion. It is because they have programmed themselves to remain small. But you are not most men, because you now know this truth. You become what you repeat, and what you repeat with belief becomes the dominant law of your internal life. You must now choose your law. Your definite chief aim is not just a goal. It is a decree. It is the primary instruction you will give to your subconscious mind every morning and every night until the command becomes automatic. It must be written. It must be spoken. It must be felt. Let me give you the structure. I demand of myself the attainment of specific outcome by specific date through method or service in exchange for what you give in return. I speak this daily with belief. I act on it daily with obedience. I will persist until it is done. This is not poetry. This is authority. You are not writing a dream. You are writing a law. And the more you speak it with energy, with volume, with vision, the more your subconscious moves toward it without question. Now understand this. Repetition rewrites identity. Identity commands behavior. Behavior creates results. This is not inspiration. It is the spiritual mechanics of all success. The man who repeats his aim aloud each morning does not need motivation. His subconscious begins to demand movement. The man who speaks his purpose before sleep gives his inner mind instructions that go to work while he rests. This is why I tell every man who desires to rise, begin and end your day with your aim. Nothing else carries more power. Nothing else will install a new self-image faster. Let me show you how this works. If you say, I am the type of man who finishes what he begins, and you say it every day and you act accordingly, you begin to see yourself differently. You no longer tolerate loose ends. You no longer walk away halfway. You begin to behave like a man who completes, and the world begins to reflect this back to you. Not because anything outside changed, but because your internal command changed. Charles Schwab, when asked what made him rise above others in the steel industry, said plainly, I believed I could do more than my position required. He did not wait for proof. He believed. He acted. He spoke that belief in the way he carried himself, in the decisions he made, in the extra work he performed. And his subconscious, trained by repetition, created the man that success obeys. Now let me give you the daily practice. This is your auto-suggestion discipline. Write your chief aim in full. Be specific. Be measurable. Be emotional. Speak it aloud every morning upon waking. Use full voice. Look yourself in the eye. Speak it aloud every night before sleep. Say it until your voice matches your decision. Take one action daily that confirms the aim. Small or large, it must be real. Repeat your identity script alongside your aim. Example, I am the man who knows what he wants. I act without hesitation. I persist until it is done. You do this for 30 days without break. If you skip a day, you start again. This is not punishment. It is mental reinforcement. You are not reciting, you are commanding. Now say this aloud. This is your affirmation. This is your decree. I speak my aim aloud. I obey what I speak. I finish what I begin. Again, I speak my aim aloud. I obey what I speak. I finish what I begin. Let this be the rhythm that replaces confusion. Let this be the voice that replaces hesitation. Let this be the new law of your life. Because the man who gives his subconscious a command with belief and obeys that command with action can never be the same again. The most dangerous man in the world is not the strongest. He is not the loudest. He does not need wealth, position, or applause. The most dangerous man is the one who thinks for himself. Because once a man begins to think with clarity, once he begins to choose his thoughts, command his actions, and repeat only what he has examined and approved, he becomes ungovernable by weakness. He no longer drifts. He no longer begs. He no longer waits for the world to give him direction because he has become his own governor. And I must now tell you the truth that many would prefer you never hear. This kind of man is feared. He is feared by institutions that rely on your hesitation. He is feared by systems that profit from your confusion. He is feared by those who are threatened by your rise, because your obedience to truth exposes their obedience to fear. That is why this truth, this way of living, this mental law, this internal power is not taught. It is not printed on the front page. It is not sold in classrooms. It is not handed down through the usual channels. Because to teach this openly would be to release men from mental slavery. And a free-thinking man cannot be controlled. He cannot be managed by shame. He cannot be led by the nose through trends, threats, or social pressure. He becomes sovereign, and sovereignty is a threat to every system built on dependence. They do not fear your income. They fear your identity. They do not fear your ambition. They fear your clarity. They do not fear your goals. They fear your refusal to compromise them. They do not fear your volume. They fear your inner stillness, the quiet certainty of a man who knows what he wants and does not look around for permission to want it. And so you must understand they don't want you to hear this, not because it is dangerous to you, but because it is dangerous to the pattern that keeps men small. Because if you obey the principles you've now received, if you repeat them daily, if you act in alignment with your declared purpose, you will begin to move differently, speak differently, walk differently. And in time, the world will no longer know what to do with you because you are no longer waiting to be shaped by it. You are now shaping yourself. Every man who has built an empire, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, Edison, Lincoln, Schwab, began in obscurity. But they did not stay there because they took command of their own minds. They refused to think as the crowd thought. They refused to believe what others believed. They chose what to dwell upon. They built their identity through repetition, persistence, decision, and they did not ask the world to validate it before they acted on it. And in time, the world bowed, not to their charm, not to their background, but to their unshakable thought. Now you must ask yourself, are you still waiting for approval? Are you still seeking confirmation? Are you still playing small to protect the comfort of those around you? Or have you decided that the man within you has waited long enough? Let me tell you what happens the moment you decide to think for yourself. Some will resist you, not because you are wrong, but because your freedom convicts their bondage. Some will call you arrogant, not because you speak too boldly, but because your boldness reminds them of their silence. Some will attempt to bring you back to who you were, not because they care, but because who you were made them feel safer. Do not go back, do not explain, do not soften. The world does not need more agreeable men. It needs more men of law. It needs more men who say, this is what I believe, this is what I will do, this is how I will live. And say it not with noise, but with consistency. Let me give you this call now. They don't want you to hear this because it ends their control. Obey, and you are no longer a servant. You are a force. This is not anger. This is not rebellion. This is spiritual power. This is the moment where you stop bowing to external conditions and begin obeying the internal command that has waited for years to be followed. Now let me give you your practice. Every morning before engaging with the world, speak aloud. I think with clarity. I act with principle. I build in silence. Do not explain your decisions to those who have not earned your trust. Choose one belief each day that you know is true, and act on it without seeking validation. In every conversation, ask, am I speaking what I believe or what is safe? Build the habit of mental independence. Write your own rules. Obey your own laws. Repeat your own affirmations. Create your own rhythm. Now speak this with full authority. This is your affirmation. I do not serve fear. I do not serve culture. I serve principle, and I walk in power. Again, I do not serve fear. I do not serve culture. I serve principle, and I walk in power. Let this sentence become your armor. Let it protect you from the opinions of those who never built anything. Let it shield you from the shame the system sells to keep you quiet. Let it carry you forward, not as a follower, but as a builder. You now think for yourself, and that is why you will never be the same. You have not been brought here by accident. You are not listening to this by coincidence. This is not a suggestion. It is not a lesson. It is not a speech made to entertain the idle or feed the imagination of the drifter. It is a command. A spiritual strike against everything you've been, everything you've accepted, everything you've postponed. This is the final call, to move, to obey, to become. If you have followed this far, then you know by now this was never made to motivate you. It was made to expose your old self and awaken the one waiting beneath it. The part of you that remembers. The part of you that still knows who you were before the world told you otherwise. The part that does not ask, "Am I ready?" but speaks, "It is time." This is not another message to ponder. This is not another idea to write in a notebook and forget. This is a moment of separation, the dividing line between the man who watches and the man who builds. And I speak now to the builder. You do not need more inspiration. You do not need better conditions. You do not need more time, more resources, or more clarity. You need only one thing: obedience. Obedience to the law you have now received, the law of thought, the law of decision, the law of repetition, the law of belief, the law of movement. These are not theories. These are spiritual commands. And if obeyed without compromise, they will transform your results so drastically, you will no longer recognize the man you were before this hour. But if delayed, if postponed, if softened, if questioned, the fire will fade, the momentum will slow, the drift will return, and the identity you tasted for a moment will vanish like smoke. Not because it was false, but because you did not act. Let me speak to you now without hesitation. You do not need another sign. You need obedience. The world has given you all it can. This speech has given you every law. What remains is your decision. You must now begin. Not tomorrow, not after reflection. Now you must stand, take a breath, and speak aloud your chief aim, not as a wish, but as a command. You must write your identity script. You must act in alignment with it today, not when convenient. You must read this again tomorrow, not casually, but as law. You must move, not when others believe in you, but because you already do. And you must stop explaining. Stop explaining your delay. Stop justifying your excuses. Stop waiting to be understood. You are not here to be understood. You are here to build. The man you were born to be is not waiting for comfort. He is waiting for command, and that command must now come from you. Let me now give you your final instruction. Write your definite chief aim. Speak it every morning. Write your identity script. Speak it every evening. Act in obedience to both, every day without pause. Remove every voice, every habit, every environment that contradicts your decision. Return to this message weekly until the voice inside you is louder than anything outside you. You do not need applause. You need repetition. You do not need support. You need structure. You do not need motivation. You need identity. And now you have it. Let me say this once more for the man who is ready. You do not need another sign. You need obedience. Begin today. Repeat your aim. Act without delay. Walk as if no one can stop you, because no one can. Now speak this aloud with your full voice. This is your final affirmation, your law, your instruction. I live by law. I think with clarity. I speak with power. I act with faith. I build in silence. I become who I was born to be. Say it again. I live by law. I think with clarity. I speak with power. I act with faith. I build in silence. I become who I was born to be. You are no longer uncertain. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer who you were. You are the builder now, and the builder does not drift. The builder decides. The builder moves. The builder finishes.